Is it possible to be a photographer if you don't come from a rich family? Or is it even probable? Like, of course there's the outliers out there, but if you're not a rich, posh, at least middle-class person, can you become a photographer? I'm going to discuss this because somebody made a great comment. If I can find it, I'll get it to ping up, but I'm pretty sure I didn't save it as a screenshot. But they just wanted to know, is it possible? Like, why it's so hard when you have no money? Because, well, first of all, this stuff, expensive. And that's the tip of the iceberg. Now, I've checked my privilege in many videos over the past, so I won't go over it in depth before, because I'm going to talk about my lack of privilege in this, but I don't want people to think that I don't recognise that I am a British citizen. This is me. This is my voice. I sound reasonably posh. At least I don't sound like I'm going to stab you anymore because I had elocution lessons. But because of that, I do have privilege. So I don't want people to think that I'm just going, well, I had a hard life. I did not. On the grand scheme of things, I wasn't walking out to a river to collect water each morning. Absolutely not. However, compared to my peers, my life was not as straightforward. And I want to use my life as a sort of example because I think when you see me here sounding like this in front of all of this, you assume I had it on a silver spoon. Not the case. So I want to talk about the difficulties I had, which some of my friends and peers didn't have, and how it's affected both of us. This, just to be really clear, is an opinion piece with very little fact and a lot of anecdotal evidence, and I want to know your opinions in the comments below. Firstly, my childhood, I grew up with a dad who's an immigrant. He left school at probably 10 or 11. He came to this country not speaking the language, and he worked for minimum wage throughout his life. He worked hard. He did as many shifts as he could, but he worked for minimum wage. My mum occasionally did part-time jobs, but had to take on most of the childcare. We didn't have much money. We were certainly not the poorest people, but we weren't anywhere near middle class. We were full-on working class people. We lived in ex-council houses. I think my parents had to move back in with their grandmother at some point or something like that. I don't know. I was very little, but we didn't have much. I didn't have designer clothing. I didn't have fancy stuff, but we never went without. I had violin lessons, but I think my auntie might have paid for them. I did sports clubs. I joined sports teams, but often, when I used to race bikes, race entry fees were often waived for us. Bikes were given to me, a kit was given to me. We didn't have the money to buy a £40 cycling jersey, let alone a £3,000 bike. So a lot of it was given to me. I've been very fortunate. I've had a lot of nice people around me who've invested into me as an individual, which has got me to where I am today. But when I wanted to be a photographer, I faced some real challenges, which I think a lot of you will be facing as well. First and foremost, I couldn't afford a camera. So my first camera was a Bronica ETRSI because it was £200, including 5 rolls of film. And this was when the 5D Mark I was out at this point. So I learnt on film because it was cheaper for the first few years until I shot so much film that it wasn't, than buying a digital camera. And also I just didn't have that cash up front. I've never assisted a commercial photo shoot because I can't afford to assist. I could never afford to assist. It never paid enough money. I had to be the main photographer from day one. I didn't get the joys of assisting some big famous photographer in London. Doing an internship is just impossible. Who's going to pay for my bills? I had to pay for those things. So I didn't get those privileges. However, and we'll get to this in a bit, I'm not convinced it would have worked for me. I had to build my kit up very slowly. I started with my first digital camera that I borrowed from an uncle, which was a 450D. And then over the years, I bought slightly better cameras. I had a Canon 50D, then a 5D Mark I after the 5D Mark II had been out for a while, then a 5D Mark II after the 5D Mark III had been out for a while, then a 5DSR once mirrorless came out. I was always very far behind on the kit because I didn't have the money. Likewise with work. I put all of my money I made into test shoots to get better. But I couldn't afford to go and work for free. I had to make these test shoots pay for themselves somehow. There's always some sort of we'll do a workshop but disguise the test shoot into the workshop. All these sorts of little tricks and things I was playing with. I couldn't go and intern. I couldn't go and move down to London and sleep on a mate's sofa for 6 months because I had to pay bills. I had to make money. It was never an option for me. Now, I had friends, and I'm not going to name them because I think that's unfair, and they went and interned at an ad agency for a few years, unpaid. They went and assisted top photographers in London, unpaid or paying very little, and their parents paid their rent and whatever it may be. And both of us have achieved the same level of success when I think about this one specific person. The same level of success. Both of us have. But we have different hardships. And this is from my opinion only, and I know I'm about to divide the room here. When you have it all, and I know this for myself personally, once I got to a certain level of cycling and people just gave me bikes, good ones to ride on, or gave me money to ride, or whatever it may be, I didn't appreciate what I had as much as when I'd worked 3 paper rounds every morning, 2 paper rounds afternoon, and then 4 Sunday rounds to be able to afford my first bike second hand. That really mattered to me. And when it's given to you, you don't really appreciate it in the same way, or at least I personally don't. When I'm sat there in my first studio, I've just left my day job, I have no money, and I have to make rent by the end of the month for my house and for my studio and make a salary, you better believe I am working harder than anybody. And I know this because when I've had huge payouts on big jobs, I take my foot off the gas. I really do. But when times are tight, I knuckle down. Now, I think for me personally, if I'd have been floated in London for a few years with all my living costs paid for to go and have fun and do all that, I don't think I would have treated that with respect. I think now I would, now that I'm older and I understand the sacrifice my parents would have had to have made for that. But I don't think I'd have treated that opportunity with respect. I don't think it would have made me the person I am today. I don't think I would be as hard working as I am today. I don't think I'd have the drive that I have today. You know, I'm already in talks with somebody about starting another YouTube business unrelated to photography because I just want to make sure I'm okay. However, my friend who had all this privilege still does as well as I do and still has his own, troubles to work through, own difficulties to work through, whatever it may be. I don't think either is a golden ticket to success. He works damn hard. He doesn't coast because he has it all in the way that I would if I was given it. So, he has a different look at it. He's like, my parents have given me this, so I must work hard at it. I'm like, if I get that, I'm going to coast for a bit because I've never had it. And I think it's very easy for me to look at him and go, you're so lucky. I can't believe your dad is a creative director. I can't believe you've got an in at an ad agency already. But on the flip side, if I had those things, I'd squander them. If I didn't have the life I had, I'd squander it. And likewise, I think if he had my life, he'd be fine as well. I don't, necessarily think it's down to the cards you're dealt to an extent, for sure. There's extremities where, if you're born into the royal family, why bother working? And also if you're born into poverty, how can you possibly justify chasing a career dream like photography? Just go and get a job because you've got to eat. There are those outliers, but we're talking about, the safe middle here. So do you need to come from a rich family to be a good photographer? I don't think so. And anecdotally, all of the photographers I know come from either working class or lower middle class, bar the odd outlier. I know a few people who come from money, who are independently wealthy, or who are funded. I know some who have trust funds. They are a minority, and it is so easy for someone like me to look at them with green eyes. But then they didn't get to have the fun I had. In the same way that I didn't get to have the security they had. There is no better. We have the cards we're dealt with. And this is what I found to be true anyway, rather than worrying about what everyone else has got, their privilege, their hardships, focus on what you have and make it work for what you can do. My career path was different to others because I couldn't do internships, I couldn't do assisting. I've never assisted an ad campaign. I've got no idea what goes on set when it's not me shooting. But because of that, I have a great different way of working, I think, to other people from what clients have told me, and they seem to like it. Maybe I wouldn't have had that otherwise. But also, if I had have had that opportunity, I wouldn't have made mistakes for 10 years. So it's just, there is no perfect storm here. There's no, it's just going to be great because of my background. You have to put the work in. At least that's what I found to be true. And definitely from the people I know who are successful, it doesn't matter how privileged or disprivileged they were coming into the industry, they've all worked hard for it. You don't get a free ride in this industry. And I know everybody pulls out David Beckham's son, Brooklyn Beckham, as the free ride. And the fact that that is the only person people can name shows you how little it happens. How often does the son of somebody who's never done a photo shoot get a worldwide campaign, or daughter of somebody? Never. It just doesn't happen. It was so unprecedented that it made the papers. But there's a video on that on my channel anyway, which explains exactly why it happened and why it was the right move. So just stick in there, hang in there, and know that all of this here didn't exist. At one point, it was a borrowed 450D, a 28mm prime lens, and a flash. And that's all I had. And I worked my way up doing family portraits, wedding shoots, bar mitzvahs, christenings. I even shot a funeral. I shot a wedding at a place where people go to die. Yeah, I did all of these jobs just to make money because I couldn't afford to assist. And I learned a lot doing it. You've just got to keep plugging away at it and do your best. That's all any of us can do. You never know what's around the corner. Would my life have been different if I came from a more privileged background? Maybe. Maybe I wouldn't have been successful. From a less privileged background? Maybe. Maybe I wouldn't have been as successful. Maybe the struggle would have been too hard from that point for me, personally, with my mentality. But maybe being in a worse position to start with would have made me tougher and I'd have been even more successful. Maybe having more privilege would have made me soft and maybe not try hard enough because it's like, well, mummy and daddy are going to sort me out. I don't know. They're my thoughts. These are just opinions. Let me know in the comments what yours are. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.